between really the film and the panelists we have here. Sometimes when we have a discussion, often in the law school in academic context, you'll find people talking about something they know nothing about. But in this context, actually, the film and the fact that it captured what's going on, what went on in JNU, in Aligarh Muslim University, as well as Jamia Millia, and of course FTI, is just hits you. Some of the centers where a lot of what we saw happen. But again, we know that that's a phenomenon which is not just in those universities that is really accentuated, but in other places around the country as well. And you got a sense also of a certain sense of solidarity which students communicated, linking what is happening in their university to a global, to a national, to a global framework and global perspective itself. But with few words, a few minor words introduction, really, I want to really turn to our panelists now and, in a sense, reflect upon what the film meant to them from their own really rich and varied experience. Again, it's not often that you have young people with such a high level of experience, right? And you can think of sometimes maybe a decade meaning more than a longer period of time, or 2 years meaning a lot more than maybe 20 years or 30 years, right? And so that's the kind of experience that is the two young panelists and of course Tista has had over the many, many years. We come to Tista probably the real company in the end, which I think is right. We begin with our two young student friends and the work that they've done. You've been very active with the Federal Institute of Social Sciences, you were in the union there, and you also worked very much as student activist in TESS itself. You want to share a little bit, just, I mean, I'm sure all of us have many memories which are triggered by the film. And I'm sure for you will be a lot we have to say really on the film. I'm sure there's so much to say that there might not be enough time, but I think I'll hand the mic over to you now. And so please share with us some thoughts you have. I mean, it's a really rich experience. What did the film really mean to you?
First of all, thanks for inviting me for this event. I always want to be in the law school, but unfortunately, I landed up like this. Anyway, this film is enriched with a lot of memories of violence for me. So my heart is still beating so high that I won't complete my sentences. So, and I also really want while this movie was going on, I was thinking about Shabzir Imam, whose name wasn't mentioned, but there is no way I can start a speech or end a speech without naming our Imam, Shabzir Imam. He is the one who started the movement, and there's a lot we have to speak about him, where there is going on where there is an erasing of public memory about him. So we don't give a chance for that. Speak about Shabzir Imam, who is in prison for a very long time now. And while watching this movie, there's a lot of memories going around me in my head, like what happened in DU. And there was some few mentions which I really want to talk about where there was a mention, I think a lot of things and difficulty speaking, but I really want to mention some of the things which I noted. There was a mention of March men in jail in 2020 when the same movement was happening. The March men entered into the campus and attacking the students. If you looked into the video, it's not just masked men. There was women, and that women who covered her face with a muffler is from DU, Delhi University, which when I was studying in undergrad, I was in my undergrad interview. So she was my friend's classmate. And she always said, how will I go to campus? And how will I sit in my class where I don't know whether the women sitting near to me, across to me, is going to attack me or not the next day, because we are seeing her in jail. And there is always a way that the masked man, who is this masked man? It always comes up in the mind that it's spontaneous and unorganized group of mob, and when the mob comes to our mind, it's just men. And it's not just men. It's not just men. There is a lot of Hindu women who, as a Muslim woman, I know how scared I am sometimes to sit in the class, not knowing what ideology or what ideology she takes up or what ideology she speaks about. So there is a collective concerns that it's more ways actually men, and it's not. If you see across the videos, there is a lot of women. And in the last video, in the CCTV video footage in the library, you see clearly that when the police were entering, a women security is giving her way to the policemen, asking them to enter into the library. So while coming up to the attack and all, it's not, they have I don't know, there is no DU footages in the video, but there was a lot of violence happening in DU during anti-GA movement, where these women started attacking us, started grabbing our hijab and stopping her in Jai Ram, Bharat Mata Ki Jai, which is actually a violent slogan for us, particularly. And this whole film I'm viewing as a part where I'm in the movie as a Muslim woman, where I have a different point of view in a lot of spaces. Actually, this movie gives a lot of insights to us, but a lot of things which there is missing when the JU is being attacked, when the student of JU is attacked. So most of the people were from the Kashmir. Particularly, they have gone to the rooms of Kashmiri students and they have attacked, which is not there in the movie. But they have, it's not possible to show the entire things in a movie, but there are something which we can't miss. There are something which we have to be pointed out. And I don't know, my heart is still beating so high, so I will stop right now. So pass the mic.
Thanks, Nidha, for sharing really very intimate and personal thoughts on going through the experiences at that particular moment in time. Turning to you, Nazu, I mean, your work has really been in Bangalore. You're just telling me, as an activist in Bangalore, looking at the entire question of the right to protest for students in Bangalore. And do you want to talk a little bit about what this film meant to you, your perspective?
Hi, again, thank you for inviting me to the panel. Like Professor said, and like the panel said, it really evokes a lot of emotions looking at the documentaries. And it also takes you back to a time where the student movement is at a height. And like everywhere, people across the country are fighting for something beyond what is there in campuses, beyond limited scope of what it would mean to them. They are fighting for a larger social transformation. They're fighting for something that is not focused on the campus. And when you look at all the protests that are happening, and in Delhi, usually you have campuses which supports student politics or which supports a kind of space or whole space for students to have conversation or like build a political life. But in Bangalore, that's not the case. Or throughout Karnataka since 1989, there's been a ban on student politics itself. And the implication of that is that there is no larger imagination of what student politics is, what life can be as in terms of student politics, what that can do or help in terms of societal transformation. I would like also to reflect upon historically what student politics has meant. If you look at the independence struggle, time during Bhagat Singh and HSRA, and it wasn't just a struggle for independence, it was a struggle for societal change, societal transformation, which wasn't limited to getting independence from the British, but to change the status quo of society in them. From independence struggle to the land struggles to the anti-caste struggles during the Mandela era and nationality struggle during the 1980s in Punjab, Assam, and the Northeast. The student movements were so focused on societal transformation, and there was a much larger envisioning of society or change in society. But that quickly changes in the 1990s with privatization of education and the change in the kind of structure education is taking. And it is only during FTIA when the student struggles, the student movements since 1990s have always been focused within a campus space, within liberation within a campus, or whatever movements that are there limited to the hostels or EHI or within a specific campus. But with the FDI movement is when there's a larger question of changing in society, or like focusing on or understanding the need for change in society, which reflects in education. It's an individual's career or life is dependent on how the society works, and to fight that status quo from with the FTI, with the Occupy UGC movement, with the road from movement, or the JNU movement, where students are branded as anti-nationals, the Gauri Lankesh movement in Bangalore, where that envisionment beyond your campus actually comes forth in since the FDI protests. And I think this is really important to see, because in the last decade or so, it's also student politics has been a platform or a launchpad for people to become politicians. And when that fails, it's seen as an individual failure. But historically speaking, student politics is more than that. It's about social transformation and social change. I think I'd like to press that.
Thanks, Rajul. Now I'd like to pass the floor to Tista, but just one line introduction for the law school. You already know Tista very well, but there's a book, Tista's autobiography, is called Foot Soldier of the Constitution. And the title Foot Soldier of the Constitution, Tista just reminded me, was given by Pauline Nariman. Pauline Nariman referred to Tista as the Foot Soldier of the Indian Constitution. So that's a book all of you must read. And I think this film has a lot to do with the work of being a foot soldier of the Indian Constitution. But I think with that short word, I hand it to Tista.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, faculty here and for having this discussion. I watched the film first it was released and last night again, then of course together with you just now. It's not just very powerful, it is extremely heart-wrenching, because I think for many of us who've been involved at different levels, I'm not the same age, but I think one is very, very involved at the level of the protests across the country. And I don't know whether the fifth word in terms of critiquing is memorializing, but memorializing in terms of a contemporary reality, also posing a question, because I think the style of the film, if you look at the film aesthetic, I think it's a key point. That it is so powerfully shot, and it is also kind of this lingering, lurking, sinister hand of the state, which is there throughout the film. But it's not just the state; it is also like what Latif was referring to, that the sinister hands of social stifling and by boycott, which is entering into the personal life of the protagonist, which is all through the film. And it is this lovely mesh between, very powerful mesh between the personal and the political that this film brings out without compromising on what it wants to talk about. And I think I'd like to just pose a question here which I think keeps coming up in a million ways to us. That because whenever I look back at the last 10 years, and with due respect and a lot of respect for Arvind's fine work on the undeclared emergency, and there's no question of every word in that being true, but if one looks at the period of post-independent India after 2014, and then the post-apart from the huge flip of the emergency, of course, I think what we saw in the last 10 years was really a very bitter counter-revolution, in every way. And I think we need to be, it's a huge regression at so many levels. And, to have police and arms and tanks on the campus, to have both the symbolic side of them and the use of arms and the use of rank violence against protesting students. What fails to amaze me is the absence of outrage in this country. I'm sorry to say, but there is outrage amongst many of us, but there's just such an absence of societal outrage. Otherwise, it's heartbreaking, and it's actually very kindering, and it's also very corrosive, because it makes you feel very despairing very often. But where is the outrage? If our campuses have become like this, are still like this in many ways, because there has been a silencing. There has been a silencing. People have been taught their lesson. And on a lighter note, I don't think we've killed the spirit yet. Because if you look at JNU and you look at my young friend Dhananjay, who was just elected, it's fabulous to listen to him. You have the same lovely Bihari speeches, and that is from a Dalit young leader. So it's not killed yet, and that's the hope, and that's what we all talk about. But I think this complete absence of outrage outside and among people at large. And I think what is very important is that period between 2014, 13 actually, when the Occupy UGC began, and the whole question of public resources, the complete squeezing out of the public university, squeezing out of the scholarships, UGC scholarships, and then of course the all-out assault when the new regime took over. But it had begun before, let's not forget. So that process we can't forget. And then 2015 to 2017, except for that small moment when the land ordinance was attempted to be brought in at the center and all opposition members marched in October 2014, except that one show by the political opposition, the only opposition in this country was the campus and the students. And I've said this, and I've said this again and again and again and again. And I've said it maybe 50 times in the past 10 years, that it is for me a matter of great shame that the political opposition, I'm glad they're up and about again. I'm glad they're giving us hope. I'm glad they're having these speeches in parliament. We need that. But the point is, they squandered a huge period and they squandered young lives. And they allowed terror to reign on us. And, it's not a nice idea to have to grow up with terror and feel fear and think of FIRs against you for the rest of your life, when your career, any case you're trying to take a radical step, maybe take an alternative step, and then you have to face these spaces and your parents and all that. So I think it's a huge disservice done by the political opposition, which it must answer. And I'm not saying this as a proverbial critique, but I think it needs to be tabled, particularly now when the opposition appears to be stronger, that you did abdicate on a huge sense of your historic responsibility. The vilification, which of course comes out in some of the excerpts of the speech, the vilification of the public university and what it means to have a public university in a country of such huge disparity. And I think we need to talk about, we're talking a rather elite institution. Hats off to the National Law School, but it is a relatively elite institution. So with a lot of respect. That the vilification of the public university has been so vicious, and it is a counter-revolution by the elite who does not understand what the need for a public university is. And I still remember, if you give me just a minute or two more, is that to have streets of Delhi with auto rickshaw drivers outside JNU talking the filth about JNU that the right wing is talking. Hits you about the kind of level of that propaganda. And the same about FTI, and the same about NIT Assam, and the same about Puducherry, same about Kashmir, which was protesting NIT Kashmir. Let's see, Pratibha. I started looking at the entire trajectory of the union, of the students' union and the staff union at JNU over 40 years, when the JNU struggle began in 2015 and 16. And I realized, you study it, you realize that even with dogs like Ramanath Upper and Bipin Chandra there, it took them 2 decades to understand the need for a diversity affirmative action program. Even Doyle's like that, because they came from an elite. Okay? So it took the Koshis and the Madhu Prasad of the world who were in the union to persuade them that, listen, if you want a Umar Khalid or a Najib, unfortunately we are not talking about the disappearance of Najib, or we want a Kanhaiya on the campus, or a Dhananjay on the campus, and we need them because of the sheer intellectual grit and resources they bring in terms of where they come from, what they are, then you have to have a diversity affirmative action program and a hugely inclusive public education system. And that's what public education is. It is not granting of subsidies and this cheapening of the discourse that only the far right is capable of, but which the Indian horrendous middle class, which is so large, becomes party and privy to the discourse because it doesn't realize how much privilege, what social privilege and caste privilege. So I'm just flagging this issue because what Nadeep just said about this being a battle for social transformation, it being a battle not just for a regime change, like we had in the independence arena, but you had Bhagat Singh, you had this entire Ambedkar, Phule, South, the entire tradition talking about a radical restructuring of the social structure. We need to talk about it all the time. So I'll stop at that, but I'll just tell you that one scene which has been captured, that's CCTV capture, and the Jamia Library scene and the behavior of the police and what the students have faced. And of course, one student lost his eyesight completely, he was blinded. And worst of all, because you're all lawyers, are going to become lawyers, the way the Delhi High Court dealt with that petition, it is sickening in the extreme. Any court watching that footage would want to put every single policeman who was there in the dock for prosecution. And yet, nothing is. Nothing is. And Aligarh was no better. The account of the student who did not speak about his torture for valiant reasons that he did not want others to stop protesting is obviously wrong. Because we know those stories. We pursued those stories. But I think we can't afford to forget it. And if 144 has been a bail for us, you and me who want to protest, then the BNS 2023, and let's touch upon that please in our discussion, has criminalized protest and the hunger fast completely, has made bail conditions more stringent, has decriminalized bestiality, and actually allows male rape. So I mean, there's so many issues with BNS 2023, which so it's not a decriminalization of a law, it is worsening of a not enough decriminalized CRPC ethics.
Thanks, Lisa, for that really powerful sharing. And I would take from where you left off and think a little bit about this entire question of, the what happens when there's a failure of that. I think what Lisa really very eloquently, very powerfully, very passionately spoken about is the failure of the law provide any sense of justice. And I think where Lisa went to say that, there's no way, there's no way for an activist or somebody who's committed to making justice to give up if the court doesn't do enough. What do you do in that particular context? The question I think is implicit in whatever she said, right? In terms of implicit in the way she put it, that your role is to understand the PNS and understand what the criminal law can be. Your role is to understand what the failure of justice may be. Your role is to understand how you can ensure that justice actually happens. That's one dimension of it. That's not the law. I think the other dimension of it itself is the question of the film and the idea that there's a certain important value to both the question of protest and the question of remembering. And the film is an act of, as Easter put it, an act of memorialization and an act of remembering. And I think this is a statement I'm very fond of, which is what William Kundera says, that the struggle of marriage is power. The struggle of memory is forgetting. So there's an imperative to remember. The forms of remembering could be flipped. And that takes me to one question which I have to actually all three panelists again, in terms of the question of what accounts, what allows for student activism to really emerge. If you go back to that film, what I thought I learned, I didn't know, was the film students are all referencing films. They're saying Tarkovsky, they're saying Pasolini, they're saying Eisenstein. So there's a way in which they're going back to their domain expertise, as it were, to make it an argument on justice in a broader sense, make an argument for protest in a broader sense. So possibly, the question I had, possibly each institution we're a part of, each education institution we're a part of, each discipline we're studying has the resources within it to cultivate, to think of an alternative imagination of justice or of broader sense of justice. I think Najib spoke a little bit about that. Nazir spoke a little bit about that, as did Nida. But perhaps they want to tell us a little bit current the studies there. And what really allowed for you to become the great leader that you were in that time period? What allowed that emergence? Was it your studies? Was it something you studied? So from that, would you for example, would you advise your students here that there's something in study, it's precious and valuable, because it cultivates or it can help your imagination to grow. And that's an important thing in an office. I know, I'm just thinking speculatively.
I think for this. It's not my studies, but studies have a part in it. But how my experience didn't allow me to study peacefully. I think that's what made me to get into this, or be part of everything and everything coming up on my plate. And I think most important in this is knowing the person sitting beside you. I think my friends didn't know me, who I am, what I'm going through, what I have the experience in being. And it eventually made me to think about starting a space where we could collectively exercise joy, pain, and struggles. A space where we could talk about all this without being judgmental. And I think when I talk about this in one word, I can say that this election was a collective exercise of pain, struggle, and joy for me. And when thinking about it, the fortune or like to be whatever we can call it, to be part of that is more beneficial when I think that I could work for the Virgin community, being part of it, when all the Virgin communities came together, knowing that they are being discriminated by not giving any space to anyone, that we will talk for us. I think it's most of us, it's experiences that we were not allowed to study peacefully. We were being triggered by the comments by the students sitting nearby us. And I think might be the aspiration to study peacefully made us to go to the street, fight for the election, be in the position, and we don't want anyone coming from our community or Muslim community to be treated as we have been treated. So when I became the vice president, and this student became vice president, it was a lot of struggles to be part of it also. Because for everyone, I was a true Muslim because of the ideology I follow, the politics I follow. So I was a true Muslim for them. So there was a lot of hate campaigns which we the panel all celebrated it as a victory over hate. We celebrated it with a great success that, great joy that, with the, I'm repeating it, collective exercise of joy, struggle, and pain. And we enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. We really enjoyed it, the victory over hate, and we could actually do a lot. Because as I said, I was not able to study for 1 month because nobody is ready to give me a room outside the campus because I'm Muslim, and administration was not ready to give me hostel. So it was my need to whoever coming to campus has to study peacefully without being struggling to get a hostel. And that I could do while I was in a position as a vice president, that is serving seats for the people who are from the marginalized community, who are coming from the vulnerable background. If there is a need, the family seats are reserved, hostel seats are reserved for them. And we brought a campus-based where how the politics is discussed, how the artists are welcome to the campus. I was saying to you, there is no way I can relate to my campus. There is no way I can relate to the students sitting near me. There was no way to relate to the Mecca festival which happens in the college. There is no way I can be part of it. There is no way that they have welcomed me in any way that shows that this is open to all of us. It wasn't. So there was always a need of in my mind that a student coming to a campus lecture should feel safe and should feel that this campus is welcoming me because the community I belong is representing this institute. So I think my experiences in a short way and then my experiences in an experience of not able to study peacefully is the reason I was in this field.
That was the same kind of question to you, because you kind of work with the student communities in Bangalore. So do you have a sense of, what accounts for, say, the greater receptivity of some students compared to other students, some colleges compared to other colleges? What allows, you're expert in this area, what allows the activism to work?
So I think one is tying the CNRC movement, which for myself was where I directly got involved in politics itself. And the biggest thing that I noticed was that if you look at Delhi, like what I was saying earlier, if you look at Delhi, the campuses have been, there has been a space for political conversation, campuses which is not true in Bangalore. So during the CNRC movement, you see students from across the city, across various institutions, various courses coming together in fighting the regime, in fighting the new law. And it's also important to notice, like you said, the trend that's there. Today, during CNRC, that was what was happening, and there are a lot of students coming in together because of the high of the movement, where you have people across the country protesting in different cities, different colleges, different areas, not just students, but also now communities coming in and protesting against the law. And this is a high that which is driving students to come and stay and protest and participate in this kind of politics. But what happens when there is no movement, there is no high, there is no Rose Bangla movement, there is no Bari movement, there is no CNRC? What happens then is also something that has been very concerning, especially in Bangalore, given the apolitical nature or apathy of students towards any kind of social transformation, like what I was saying before. I think that has been a very difficult, in fact, space to get students to kind of see that it is not just the high in which you need to work, but also when there is nothing happening. When there is no kind of movement that is happening, it is also at that point where you need to put in effort, you need to interact with others, you need to participate in the movement when there is nothing significant happening in society. And I think adding to that, today the trend is ecology. Or when you say sustainability or when you throw words like sustainable goals, you have people interested in coming. But no, it is important as an activist for me to draw the parallels between sustainability and ecology to the social norms, to how when a mine is sanctioned to a certain party, certain group, then how it affects people and how that in turn affects the ecology and the complete web of the whole social structure that we have today. I think that is very, it is not addressed at all, or it is addressed very little because the onus is put on an individual to say you need to use metal straws and not use plastic. But nobody addresses the fact that the top 5% of the people who own wealth are the ones who contribute over 35 to 40% of emissions across the world. And today that's the trend. Today you see ecology as being one of the things that people are looking at and feeling enriched by it, thinking, okay, they're losing their future. But it is important to see the connection of ecology to larger politics itself. And to also mention the right to protest. You see today, there is no space in the city where you can go protest or you can go put your voice out there. And every time you need to protest, you get a permission. The fact that you need to get permission for a protest itself is so ridiculous. Protest is in fact a right where you go express your discomfort or your disapproval of what the government is, what policies are. And the fact that you have to go to the same regime to go ask for permission to do that itself is ridiculous. And today since this NRC, there has been such strong state action on students. If they see the lightest of voice or action that is being raised by students, instantly there are FIRs filed, instantly there are students being detained, they're being taken away, and FIRs filed to threaten students to not get involved in politics. And that shouldn't be something that drives students away, but in fact, it should be something that drives students together to come together and fight for a change in society.
Sorry.
Both responses were really fantastic. I think both of them basically said that it doesn't matter, you know, if you come from what disciplinary background or what profession you have. They said that if you're a person who thinks in a wider way about being human, the reference to climate change and the reference to just the right to education. So if you think in a wider way of being human, you will want to take forward the right to assembly, association, and expression because these are values that you believe in. So I think thank you for really two very, very powerful responses. Now I'm going to hand the mic to Tista, because Tista made another point actually. Tista made the point, if you got the reference to the JNU context, she said that the reason I understood why JNU has emerged as a certain kind of hub is because of a certain kind of politics or affirmative action which was followed over the years, which has allowed to more diverse body as well. That's one kind of response that is something, but I'll leave it to her to that. Yeah.
Yeah, the process that began in the public university, which was set up in the 1960s, reached a certain level at JNU. Unfortunately, the other public universities like HCU and all, the casteism of there is much still rampant. So that process has not yet happened. So that is one very important issue we need to continue to flag. But I think I just want to come back related to this deep politicization of the campus, which is I think what the narrative has been referring to a lot when he talks about the absence of certain cultures of protest, cultures of discussion, cultures of dialogue, even what Ida was saying about the feelings of exclusion, not just with Dalit student states, but also Muslim student states, other Bautan student states, because you be in a certain way, you dress in a certain way, you believe that your belief system is different. So I think, I think we need to, today when we seem to have got a bit of a breather after the election results, I'm coming back to that again. I think we need to get back to basics, somewhere, so that we push and try to open this breather further and don't let it regress back into something which is worse than what we had before in the last 10 years. And I mean that, the Lindo Committee, I mean, for many of you, I don't know if you know, it's a liberal perspective which was so dangerous, which kind of tried to tell us that it was politics on the campus is messy, politics, the doubt. Whereas for all of us who got politicized on campus, it's a ludicrous argument because if you don't have politics on the campus among students, then where will you have it? So I think we need to look at this progression or regression of politics from the mid-1980s to now, with the kind of coalescing between an extreme economic right wing and a socio-religious right wing, which I keep talking about, whether it is and neoliberalization, and how the two have gone together, and then its impact on public education. I just want to share one anecdote, which is just to sort of shock us a little bit because of the power of propaganda. I come back to again the verification of JNU, which is also the verification of FTII, and all student leaders, actually, all of you, were verified in a particular way for doing the work that you did so bravely, is that there was a famous doctored video of JNU. I think all of you know about it, where what Nida was to the speeches being made, where wrong slogans were attributed deliberately to certain sections of students because they were Muslim. Now, one of the good things that the Aam Aadmi Party did, not too many of them, unfortunately, but in 2020, it was not a joke. The 2020 guys, they completely abdicated their responsibility. But I'm talking about before that, the one good thing they did is that they sent that video, entire video, 16-hour footage or 21-hour footage to the district magistrate for verification of whether it is doctored or not. And it came out, the honest district magistrate came out with a very good report, which in fact showed that the Z News footage was vicious, completely doctored. Okay, now we got hold of this report. I mean, Sabram and we got hold of this report, we published it, and actually that story was read across campuses everywhere. Now, within a month of that, I forgot now March 2016 or April, in this city, at one of the campuses, there was a roundtable discussion on what was happening in all our universities. And it was Justice Santosh, recently retired from the Supreme Court. I was horrified, and I'm again speaking this because I know I'm talking to the lawyer, legal. I was horrified. He was actually parroting exactly what the right wing was saying about the student movement and particularly. I did not help myself. I was fortunately carrying that report with me. And I just said, sir, I'm interrupting you. I don't interrupt this economy. I need you to stop because you're just completely further propagating propaganda. Please read this magistrate's report. And there was quite a thing in the room. I'm astonished that a reasonably respectable Supreme Court judge can actually fall prey to such a without opening himself to that. So, the propaganda went very deep, and this is what all young people had to face at the time. And I think, therefore, the kind of sheer bravery with which the student community battled this proto-fascist state is something that needs not just this film, but political acknowledgement. Yeah, I'm emphasizing that. Because unless we will not learn and make improvements in the future. This in Bombay recently has again let go of many students, has closed down departments. It's happening everywhere. It's not as if things have improved. So it's about time that the political opposition turns its attention to public education and the struggles for reform against on the caste lines, etc. We lost Payal Kapadia in Maharashtra. She was a medical student who is both an Adivasi and a Muslim. And the fact that she came from that identity, and like Vida said, it was women who tortured her brutally into her death and let her death to her death. It was not male students. So we've seen this permeation of hate on the campus and hatred against certain sections. Dalits and caste is always faced, but now communities are facing. So I think it's something we really need to contend with.
I think we actually open it up. I think the right time open it. Yeah. One second.
No, maybe was talking about how there is no space to protest and whether that we have to take permission. What happening in campuses right now is that there is a predetermined space by the universities that you come and protest here and leave. Okay, there will be barricades everywhere, and you come protest here and then leave after that, and there is nothing. Like nobody is affected, nobody is disturbed actually. So, for example, in Delhi University art faculty, there is barricades on both sides. You come protest day and you can leave, and sometimes they will detain you and they will leave you after 2 hours, 3 hours, and nobody is being disturbed. It's just that people coming and protesting and going. And in Delhi, another place in Jalandhar, saying that people are getting detained, and I think there is a point where we have to occupy the other spaces where protest is not happening actually. It's not that it's actually like Foucault says that disciplinary of bodies, like we are disciplined as this is how we have to act. Okay, and the state and the institute will ask us to do like this, and we are doing it and going back. And the other way is attendance. In all the campuses, there is a strict attendance where it's another kind of surveillance, another kind of disciplinary action where disciplining our bodies that there is no way to protest because there is no time for us. So there is in this and behavior and all. I think this is what happening there. Attendance is strict. We have to have 75% of attendance. Otherwise, we are suspended or we are not able to write our exams. So this is another kind of thing we have to think about and come out of this. Like we have to find a way out of this.
Yeah, let's do that on that, right? Maybe we take 4 or 5 comments and then we can take over. That makes sense? Yeah.
My name is Sandeep, and I also graduated from the university back in 2022, so long ago. Yeah, and it really was me what you said about how the Jeffrey is being team on the side of Jeffrey. You expect for the organization that I thought was really fully and after that, I've not seen any motivation like that. So again, I think last year, there was an exam which and I was right. And there was one of the super and also the fact that the anti government is very deep. And there has been a progress from down students in the characters now, but I am concerned about this instance. A bit more slack pictures, maybe. So my question was that to is that how do we organize the narrative now this work and also to they're going to move the campus ethics and group. I guess this is not fair for the conductor of the program also to ask questions, but I couldn't help myself in doing. I have a lot of questions to ask, but I put buzzwords so that I can ask a lot of questions. And the topics of there is a thing that is happening quite recently where new professors who are ad hoc are taken away and being replaced by those who are close to the administration. And the thing that is observed in places like LSR is that these are politically motivated appointments. Would you like to comment a bit on it? But my major question is something that concerns NLS students very much. I would like to give you some numbers. So I was in Delhi for 2 years where I was studying my undergrad. My entire education there, including the cost of living and the cost of food, cost me 3,60,000. I have to pay that here in this campus just as fees. So when we have a public university like NLS, making the students pay this much for cost of education for a year, that means if we calculate it, it would be about 9 lakhs to complete an LLB, or about 15 lakhs to complete a BA. The narrative is that there is placements outside. We don't know job market news there. And when we have a public university, this is not just a case with NLS, it's with IITs, IIMs, everything has been the case. So how do you view this privatization of education and not the funding that the government is not giving the universities themselves, that we have to adopt steps like these? Because the professors have to be here as well, but we just say that okay. Good evening, and my name is Suvansh, and thank you so much for this powerful insight. So I had a two-part question, if I could generally related to 2 points which came up. One was the mention in the movie about Elle talking about the fact that her husband was standing beside her with protest, but did not stand up against his own parents when they were making when they were basically skewing blatantly cast as wrong. And another was the mention, of course, previously of the depoliticization of campus. It's generally apathy and depoliticization which is going around. So on one hand, one discussion is about standing up to your own parents and standing up to your own family members as a student against fascism and against classism, against this discourse which goes around your own parents and your own relatives view against the most oppressed. And the other is the depoliticization of campus and student activity. So there could be, you have people sending messages about recruitment by blatantly where biased with government, the BJP essentially, a message being sent about recruitment, and you speak up against it and you are told, oh, but there are only 19 lakhs. What can we do? How dare you speak up against this? We are providing employment. So my general question is, like, to the panel in general, like, how do you address these questions of, like, starting activism at home, like, but stand up to your own parents and people who protested and saying, oh, I am actually dependent on my parents, but it's obviously upper class people making these songs, which makes it redundant. And second, how to address this depoliticization of campus, which by itself is inherently political.
We take 2 more questions.
Well, thank you so much. Actually, I'm also from the University of Delhi, and I had a question regarding what was portrayed in the movie. There was one scene where the filmmaker was obviously showing people as an elementary like, so, there's just a barricade that sort of separates the student from the police. Probably the filmmaker is also not probably she decided who knows, probably she should go back and have them beat her anything. Probably she's going to do the same things. So, I mean, my question is also have been how to be as an activist, as someone who's at learning, is there a possibility of somehow reconciling those boundaries? Because I understand the streets are being pulled by someone else. All of us are playing the same game, but the game is inside of someone else. We be against each other. Is there a possibility of making the other part, the other people on the other side of the language here as well, they're as impressed with us. We're not fighting against them, we're fighting against Christians. There's all, is there one of the demons? Take comments.
Thank you for such a wonderful panel. I think before starting against right? I mean, it reminds me of what Najib said about the absence of conversation, the absence of any productive discussion, or even forget memory, but even the realization that this is a reality. It's very difficult in a city like Bangalore, in Karnataka, where we've not seen out having an FDI. So from our experience, these are from the work we've already doing. What is impact of documenting resistance and what perhaps is documenting movement of resistance and how to disseminate this and bring it into the memory of today to be able to re-organize us, to be able to politicize us, have spaces. What is conclusion? What do you think we should as young people put our energies in to the right stories that we forgot? To be able to do this, right? Every effort is erasing these stories, erasing these memories, separating individuals individually, like putting people in jail where their speech cannot be heard, cannot be heard. So that is the thank you.
One before you, sorry, I just have to with the speaker before you. Can you just jog my memory? I just noticed one point. The one I noticed the woman speaker just before. No, just before you. Yeah, what just two words about what you spoke. I just remember. No, depoliticizing and parents standing up with parents. That was the first thing. I'm talking about the second. No, there was one in between. Three, yeah. So the second one. Yeah, sorry. Just repeat it. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, just jog my memory.
Shakti, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, yeah, just briefly, just in 2-3 lines.
Trying to understand that for me, the strength of these murder moments, it is safe. The policeman there is
yeah, got it. That's the one I want to take first. That's right. So, I don't know if you remember December 15, 2019. The CA bill was passed, the CA 2019 was passed on 12th in a very hurried manner. So 25 hours in Parliament. 15th, there was that brutal attack on Jamia. And the next day, students from Jamia offered roses. Do you remember that? For me, it's a very powerful image. It's a powerful image not because I believe that the police women or men they were offering to they would get transformed, but the offer of those who have been beaten to say that, listen, do not treat us like the enemy. We are one of you. We are students from here. And then, of course, the fact that the Jamia thing led to Shine Bar. The community coming up to support the protest. And then, of course, all the bars that came up everywhere in the country, the whole organic way the protest went. I think to answer your question, so there's that one anecdotal answer. The second is Kanaiya's speech on 3rd and 4th of March 2016, that night, when he was released from jail. The iconic, because there in the film as well, because of it. And the way he's able to draw a parallel between the Jawan, the Kisan, in terms of the caste composition of the police, the caste composition of the army, and the caste composition of farmers, workers, laborers, and say that you're still dividing us. So, the understanding is there. The question is, how do you operationalize it? And how do you operationalize it into an action or a program or whatever? Now, I find this Agniveer policy, which, everybody tells me, from whatever little I understand, is not just the contractualization of the army, but it's horrendous because you're going to arm a whole section of young people, teach them the use of very dangerous arms, and then you're going to literally let them use and flee in a very embittered, difficult world. Now, of course, as a patch-up measure, you have the BJP government saying we put them into the police and all, which means you'll have even more brutalized police, according to me. So I think that those are the protests against army, whether it was in Rajasthan or Bihar, which are the traditional army sending state, because they're the kind of states which have sent one or Haryana, districts in UP, like Azadi. We need to be talking across these divides, which is why there's a quotation in the film also. It's a very reflective film actually because it raises these kind of questions. And I think it is important because if you look at the original left revolutionary struggles, they did try and deal with some of these non-binaries, where they tried to say that, even they are oppressed, even they are oppressed kind of thing. But how do you do it? And which are the forces that will do it? Can the students' movement alone do it? I don't think so. It has to be student movements plus, anti-caste movements, political reform movements, etc. But I think it's a very, very important point to make. I just wanted to flag that. It's very, very important. For the third question, one of the things that the last 10 years has thrown up is the efforts at an independent media coming up. The independent media, which is digitalized, which is YouTubers, which is even print in some cities and districts. And one of the reasons why this media came up is because of the, when we began our career as journalists, however truncated, there was some space for the protest voice. The protesting voice, whether it was labor movement, whether it was Dhaka Saman's textile strike, whether it was a railway strike, there was some space, however truncated, in the quote-unquote commercial mainstream media. Post-neoliberalization and Samir Jain formula, that news is just what appears between advertisement pages, which is the Times of India formula, all that started disappearing. So therefore, this whole effort, which all these independent digital media, etc., they are trying to do is this. But I think the difficulty because I do run a alternate media portal. We ran journalism for Punjab for 20 years, published it every month. Very tough. The problem is resources, because we're also unionists, we're also trade unionists, we're also part of Bombay Union of Journalists. We need to pay that journalist reasonably well, right? So now we are thinking of trying to share the ground level report. That's what we formed 2 or 3 collectives. Post a conference we held in Bangalore in January this year. I was there as one of the panelists, where there were 90 independent media outlets from 12 languages. And we're trying to see if ground level coverage, like you have PTI and ANI, which is now starting to charge too much. So we can't afford to get it. And they're not interested in covering projects. So can we create a band of about 7,000, 10,000 reporters in the Mofussil towns, in the things who can actually go out, print and video report, and we share those, and we don't look at this exclusivity business. So we are trying to crack that because all of us are also very individualistic and ambitious, want that story in first, and I'm including myself, so I'm not trying to point fingers. So it's a difficult area for journalists because you're trained to be wanting your story in, So then to be a good collective performer is not always easy, but we are trying. We're trying. The first question, and I'm sure my young friends will answer better than I do. How do you stand up to your and how do you also at the same time stand up to the depoliticization of it? For many of us who had the benefit of a upbringing where you've been able to question, I think it's really a luxury in India. It's really a luxury which benefits you socially. It's a social benefit. And it's very hard. It's very hard because the last 10 years, I've also seen friendships break up. I've seen communities break up. I've seen families break up. Because, while I completely respect and admire what Nida is saying and experiencing, I'd like to tell her that among the majority community, there are people who stood up at great risk and have also been vilified by their families and communities. And we need to respect that also. Because sometimes when we are so burdened by our own experience, we're not able to see that. So that has also happened, And very embittered battles have been fought by young people, older people, to hold on to the values that they hold dear and not to give in to corrosive hate. So it's a tough call. It's a tough call. But I just want to hark back to my favorite theme, which is that if we feel that there's a little bit of a breather with this election, don't let the political proposition of lightly. Campaign with them, push them, they owe us this. And they owe us, therefore, a political campus. They owe us talk on against the anti-conversion laws, which is what this entire corrosive criminalizing relationships is about. And I think we need to push them on this tricky issue. It's good to hear great speeches in Parliament, but we also want some delivery in the states where they govern. So repeal the anti-conversion law in Karnataka. You have the numbers. Sorry, Congress has the numbers.
So I will pick up from that question of knowing the person from the other side. touch the barricade. So for me, while I'm protesting, it will be hard for me to know the person standing standing opposite of me because they have beat me back. I was pulled into jeep in front of Kejriwal's office, Kejriwal's home in Delhi. There was pulled badly into the jeep, dragged through the door, dragged to the road at midnight when we were protesting. And we were just 3 people and 2 are Gujarati's and 1 not. I'm just putting it in front because they have asked the other person to leave and they have taken us to the jeep and beaten badly and asked us, why are you protesting from here? You should go to Pakistan. All this stuff which usually they do. So for me, standing and having all this, it was hard for me to see the kind of person coming from the other side because that's how I was treated. That's what my experience was. And I think the questions which was asked by you that we have to start from the home. Actually, we have to start from the home. We have to start from our friends sitting nearby. We have to ask them. We have to talk to them. We have to put them to the better sides. We have to educate them. There was a moment when CAA, when Northeast and Muslim violence was happening. Northeast India and violence was happening. One of my friends called me at midnight and asked me to be safe, to be there in the room, don't go for the protest. It's being very violent. I understand the concern of that person who's coming from very previous background. They asked that I can sit in home today. Will you go for the protest tomorrow instead of me? No, that person just was mom. They can't do that. And there was a whole discussion in the group, in my BA Honor Sociology group, where they were celebrating that the exam date is extended. The class test is extended because of the violence happening. So they were very happy with that. Well, I'm coming from the other side, knowing that what is happening to my community. So from the way I have experienced, it's very different for me, how I have seen the people, how the people with me reacted to me. And I think I don't have friends in from college right now. I don't have any of my classmates right now talking to me or being part of it. Sometimes they text us, okay, we are proud of you, we are being the assistant, senior vice president. Forget. So that's what I have been in that experience coming from studying all the time from a Muslim, Muslim college, Muslim schools, and coming to Delhi. It was a very different experience for me. So this is what my experience has given. But as you said, we have to start from the friends. Like we might, the most of you might be from a very privileged background, know the other person, and you have to start from them. You have to start from the family. That's the only option you have. And about depoliticizing the campuses, and I think, as you said, JU and other campuses, the Jamia, CA movement, and even University, all these campuses after a lot of movement, and when we started questioning the authorities, this kind of the banning of the political movement, political organization in campus that literally started. I think recently you might have seen where authorities have released a statement saying that PSF is not, PSF is a less organization, it's not part of this campus and don't, and asking media to take fight from them. And they have called fraternity movement members to that also individually to the cabin and threatened them to not to release any kind of posters. So it's also they have been suspending the students by saying that you have voted the religious sentiments. Last few months might have seen it in the like this is how the campus is happening, and I think there is a mass need of protests to happen in each campus. I'm pretty sure that in this campus there is no protest not happening. There is no discussion happening. This might be the first discussion where protest, talking about the protest and how the protest should happen, or what is the impact of the protest happening. Just think that tomorrow you don't want any Rohit Bambila in your corridors to be that. You don't want any of your friends to be in the bad fortune stage. So that's how the protest has to be gone. That's how the discussion has to be gone. You are studying law, you have a lot of things to be done as lawyers. There's a lot you can do. I also actually wanted to, but didn't plan it. But then I think you can do a lot. So it's in your hand. I mean, as a law student, you can protest and also advocate for this in a very different manner.
I think I want to answer a couple of questions now together, to do with career, to do with the police person being ordinary, and then come to the fees issue also. So I think today in India, unemployment is the highest we ever known. We speak about police or like now mentioned Agniveer. Do people really want to become a cop? Do people really want to join the army? Do they want to sit in the borders, sitting holding guns, waiting for an enemy to come and attack? Why do people even go to or look for a posting in the army, a posting in the police? Why are people worried about their careers if there is enough employment opportunity? If the state is providing enough employment for people to actually get jobs. You see since neoliberalization, there is privatization of everything. Be it your education, be it your PSUs, everything that is state funded and state run is being privatized, is being outsourced, is being policies are being changed to the benefit of corporations. Today you have the NEP. I'll come back to the NEP regarding the fee issue. But today you have the NEP and like you have so many policies, the new labor laws, everything that is made, the BNS, everything is made to benefit a certain class of society. Everything is modified and moderated in a way that it's not for the people, it is not for who needs or who has to get these kind of liberation. Today, we're speaking about the Azadi question. When you see during protests slogans of Azadi being raised, when you see at protests when people are saying Azadi for certain communities, certain regions, certain spaces, we need to understand that this was not the Azadi that Bhagat Singh fought for. This was not the Azadi Phule fought for. This was not the Azadi Ambedkar fought for. This is an Azadi that was fought for by the rich to be controlled and handled by the rich. And coming to the police question, there's actually the representation of the film is also Pasolini's speech after university protest in the May 68, where he speaks about he'll join the police if they are the proletariat, if they see the student of the bourgeois class. And it's really important to understand today, if you look at the Karnataka State Police, in the last 3 years, the exam hasn't happened because of corruptions within the system, the Karnataka State Police. With the Agniveer, like ma'am said, you're constantly trying to take away that form of employment and trying to contractualize those jobs. And this creates a fear within people, and this creates, therefore, when people come out, they're trained with arms and everything, and when they come out, there is a larger fear of what might their response be to issues of unemployment, issues of lack of any kind of basic social needs, basic social support from the state. I think with regard to NLS, why very importantly said in the again documentary, why is education so expensive? Why is it so inaccessible for someone who's coming from a marginalized class to access education? Education is supposed to be something that should be providing liberation and freedom. Today, it provides oppression and discrimination. So you really need to question when you ask why education is why is education so expensive, you need to question the policies that are behind education, what kind of policies that are made, who recommends these policies. During the, I think, Mandal Commission or Kothari Commission, I'm not sure if one was one of education, there was an imagination of a common school system where anybody living in a certain locality sends their kids to that locality. Today, education is so privatized that they are trying to club government educational institutions from between multiple villages to one, and this further discriminates or eliminates students from accessing education. Girls who are not able to travel to different villages to get this kind of education. Policies are made in such a way that today you don't call them dropouts, you call them diploma holders, or you call them certificate holders. You don't actually call it for what it is, but you whitewash education, you change it into something else. I think something that was again mentioned by ma'am was that today we have to question political opposition. In Bangalore, the problem is not whether BJP is in power or Congress in power. You cannot protest. Farmers protest, they are beaten, affairs are filed. Students protest, affairs are filed. And on offenses which are non-bailable, offenses which put them in prison for long periods of time. And so it's not really a question about who's in the opposition or what questions there is, but it's also about changing the system itself. When you speak about BNS, why it's not just about why it's bad, but not about decolonizing a system. It's further increasing discrimination in targeting sections of society. And I think that's a larger question to be asked and also spoken about.
Give you a chance to say.
No. Do you okay with that, or we so a couple more questions we can take then? If any other few more questions.
So, my question is for you. We have been watching these things for a few years, happening throughout India, and I also belong to the marginalized community. So, my question is, what is the solution? Like, I think that I do not call a state. I think the society and the state, these are both same thing. I think diffuse now. And like, you can go to the courts, you can learn politics, then you will know that, okay, you can do that, you can do this. And I don't think that like, there is any solution. And like, and there is no hope yet. And it is really scary, a scary situation that, but we say simple childhood that you are Indian, we proud of your identity. But I think it is a very practical situation, like they go nationalism, and they say, okay, uh, you people are proud of their national identity and why you you are not proud of your national identity. And also, I think that would be true. And people from the cabinet that should they do? Yeah.
My question was just specifically on NLS and the writing field. Uh, in terms of what is the solution to that, I'm not so sure that students can come up with it. It is just political say factor that we need to put on the government, we go to our vice chancellor, we do something else. Like it's just at some point I am unsure of what I can do even within living this state to try and fix that issue. Last question.
My question is about the documentary itself. I was wondering, what was the point of this FPI student protesting against the appointment of Vijay Rahman? Before that, I read the list of presidents of FPI before it. Karna, Gopala Krishnan, Venegal, Gopala Krishnan Sen, Venegal, all Brahmin Karna. What is the point of protesting for? Just because the flow, I mean, the power has gone fast from secular government to weekly government. Why should Moses participate in that product? What is in it for them? Has it ever bothered them that secular government that the president of FPA is not go out? They got bothered. The student of another that the motor in the CO is a line from Manaswati. That is ever bothered. The student of another that we got majority of faculty are from that secular strictly. Why should Moses participate in the grammar of monarchy? That Dr. A says, Dr. Ambedkar says, that these sort of products are, why not simply follow the constitution method to achieve them? Why should we, the Moses, participate in this product?
We can also be concluding that.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I'll just begin and then leave it to the three other panelists and we'll wind up. I think a couple of very important concerns and questions have been raised, and I think it has implications in the way we think about the issues. One is I think, very important question, what you said, right? Which is in some sense very heartbreaking when you say that, there is no hope. Right? It's a very important sense of frustration, which you're really communicating. So maybe I'll try to answer it in the sense of that, how do you deal with what you call the sense of frustration? Right? And you'll acknowledge and understand that you're not the first person to feel frustration. The people before you have that frustration. Right? So it's something we can learn from the experience of other people who experience sense of frustration. Now we'll go to one really, I think, very, very beautiful, very moving note, which is by Baba Ambedkar. You look at volume, which volume is evident of volume 12. It's a handwritten notebook precisely of this topic. For frustration. You read it, I'll send you the note. But what he says is this. He says, I'm just trying to remember from memory. He says the untouchables are the weariest, most frustrated people in history. Now, their time nor history can change anything. And then you think that, that is the end. But then it's Baba Ambedkar, of course. And then he immediately references a poem by Shelley. And he says that, you imagine yourself as a star going up in heavens and looking down below the earth below. Right? I'm not quoting the poem quite as well as I should, but there's what? The invocation of Shelley and the romantic imagination. Shelley, again, is a man who fought against the conventional pieties of his day. Right? So he's Baba Ambedkar quoting Shelley. Then he quotes Emerson on the idea of the important thing is to cultivate what he calls a plus condition of body and mind, going to philosophy. Then he goes to history. He says the condition of the Jews. He says the Jews are someone who in the past experienced a similar sense of frustration. So they broke out of that sense of frustration. So there's a way in which you have to find, sometimes you might not find the answer in your own situation. You might not. You might find that people around you only aid your sense of frustration. Then your role is to go to history, go to literature, go to culture, and cultivate that imagination. It can help you break out of the sense of frustration. It's not easy for me to say, but I'm just giving a certain kind of way of thinking of this question of frustration. Right? And so that's one point. The second point about frustration, I think, is it's really due to one being isolated and one being alone. So to break that sense of isolation. Again, this is a very, very powerful thinker. You go to Hannah Arendt and the origins of totalitarianism. She says the three conditions which define the contemporary. She says loneliness and isolation. Right? Solitude is a good thing. So solitude is a good thing when you're in the middle of a crowd. Your relationship with yourself, you don't have a problem. But the isolation is a huge problem. What is isolation? Isolation is precisely what my three panelists have fought their entire lives for longer and shorter periods against, right? Isolation means you believe the world can't change because you are alone in the world. And the idea of breaking isolation is you think of a group, you work with a group, right? And so, be it Rida, be it Nazar, the idea that being a part of groups breaks the sense of isolation opens up the possibility that things can change. So even if it's see again, we're not in a position to give great advice, right? In the sense of, I mean, what works for you is your individual one. But I think that in the service of that, right, what we should do is break that sense of isolation, which means working with people in groups, talking to friends, as Linda just said, talking to friends, talking to family, talking to whoever it might be, to open up the possibility that things can happen. And the other concept reference solitude. Solitude again is the answer, not solitude, loneliness. So loneliness is the disease of the 20th century. And I think you agree the disease of the 21st century as well, where you're in the middle of a crowd, but you can't relate to anybody around, right? So how do you cultivate that sense of relationship with the world around? Could be as simple as in her own words, chest for chest, say, heart for heart, and whatever it is, you have to break that sense of loneliness within you as well, right? So I think that's the way you think these ways of addressing the problems we are in today. And I think it's not easy to give a concrete solution. But I think it's about cultivating an attitude of mind. And again, going back to Baba Ambedkar, there's a really beautiful book again. It's called Ambedkar, the Intimate Details, sorry, the Attendant Details. Attendant details, right? There are people who remember it. And everybody's memory is of him as a reader. Right? So you get back to that point. He is I argue, arguably, a much more difficult situation you and I are in. Right? And he broke that sense of isolation by engaging in a conversation with minds who are outside their product sphere as well. Right? So you have a responsibility to read more widely, to understand more widely, and break the sense of isolation, cultivate the sense of optimism. Because again, it's very important, I think, especially in academic university, to cultivate some kind of optimism in each other. That's a responsibility we have. And I think as faculty members, right? So people will tell you that, one thing we're getting at one last comment I should make actually. One of our colleagues once went to meet one of our friends from Kashmir, right? One of our human rights activists, Professor from Kashmir, right? And young person from Bangalore went to meet him, and he sent them to meet some other lawyers in Kashmir. And the lawyers from Kashmir said, nothing. Frustration. He said, nothing is going to change. The world is in a really bad place. Okay. Right? And then they came back and reported to Professor, that's what man said. So Professor said, I'm not religious, but the only sin there is sin of sin. So you have to break that sense of sin. It's very important, I think, for you personally, for us, collectively. So that'll be my answer.
I know some point of like thinking very hopelessness, frustrated, I think, because of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar's frustration we are here. So it's someone's frustration we are here right now. And I always take with me the quoting of Bell Hooks, where she says that margin is part of the whole, but it's in the margin which we make a space of resistance, a radical possibility of that, not at the same way, but in short. So, where a lot of movement takes is as that we are in the margin, we know, but we are the part of the falling wave. But we make that space a space of resistance, and where there is a lot of radical possibilities. And as I said, it's because of a lot of our ancestors that I went to university, like a university. You are here in the NLS. So it's that ancestors have made us to here. They are frustrated with their hope. We are here, so with our hope, a lot of people will become lawyers and judges. So for that, I have to answer like that. And for the NLS, I don't know. As being a professor, I guess I'm not aware of the speaking or something.
I think your question was what's the point of protesting or what's the point of protesting? I think it's really important to notice that throughout the country, if any kind of protest, any kind of resistance towards the government has largely come from the debate community. And if you look at Niyamgiri, if you look at Hasbio, like in terms of mines being sanctioned and people being displaced and dispossessed of their land. It is these communities that have stood strong, fought against a regime that wants to maintain a status quo, that wants to maintain a kind of structure that has been existent for decades, centuries, and millennia. And if you want, and to envision change, to envision a change in that kind of a structure, does not, it is not merely limited in change in policy or in executing a certain policy, but it requires change in society as a whole. It requires the society to envision itself very, very differently than what it is today. And I think this is being students, and historically students having played a significant role in society. And like I said earlier, students, education being a space of liberation, and that has to be a space of liberation and freedom, which has become a space of discrimination and oppression. This is the change that you should look forward to, where as someone who is coming from an oppressed or marginalized community, to envision society where that oppression itself ceases to exist, or you are not just doing that at a rate or at the in the sense of policy or changing reforms, but with the idea of revolution, or like, and it is the marginalized and oppressed who lead society as a whole, and not the ones who've been oppressing us so far. I think I'd like to conclude.
To attend the Rita and Nadeem, I think you made my job much easier. I just want to say, actually, honestly speaking, I can only respond with a lot of empathy, because you can't prescribe why you should do something. And of course, what Arvind said is something very profound, and I of course agree with every word. But I honestly feel that you have to feel, by recognizing exactly what you said about the Hindu Taman and how to evade it, that there is still a reason to protestism, and that we cannot run away. Yes, it might have been the Savannah, which is a problem. Certainly, it's a problem. We are not running away from it. But having a Gajendra Taman is a mockery of anything that FTII ever is. And I think therefore it needs to be protested. I think we cannot run away. I would like to say that. We need to flag that. So that's one point. Secondly, I think all of this what we try to say, I agree completely with Nadeem that that push for social transformation that Bhagat Singh said, and all the revolutionary leaders who said we don't want just a change at the top. I agree. But I think we also need to factor in something else, which is, and this is across the world, and India's, and also among democracies, is how the nature of the state has changed. And the nature of the state is really solidified, become very rigid. And whether you use phrases like deep state or whatever, across political parties and formations, the nature of the state has changed. And we've all trying to figure out, we've been in this business of understanding, reading, academically, trying to analyze politically, etc. We're trying to understand the actual extent and nature of this implication of this, but it has changed. You can see it in so many ways. The weaponization of the law, for instance, the rigidifying any sort of, even earlier, normal constitutional norms which are not available. 144 is a very good example. The way 144 is a weaponized section of audacity. So I think this is just a wonderful flag for you to think about. How do we deal with this game in reality when our challenge is also to transform society, which of course will never go. And finally, I also want to say that we have co-panelists like Veda and Nadeem, one has huge admiration for. I would wish one could read your writing soon. I wish you would write, because it's important for us to read that. And to write about all your frustration and learnings, but also to read about where did you see the signs of hope. And where, if you lost a lot of friendships that caused you a lot of pain, where you gained some. because I think it's important. You love to be honored to have that right team. It's very, very important to have that. I had a long conversation with Samura, and I know that we're always in the conflict in ways. And I think we all need to be engaged back. I also would like to say that however much one discusses this institution or Hindal or Ashoka or whatever, I still admire young people for hosting today, for having those postcards outside the Palestine, for protesting against the BBC documentary, and for consistently having protests on the Palestine and many other issues. So wherever you rise up with your spaces, just keep doing it. And we keep questioning each other, which we should and must, but we also admire what little you can do whenever you can.
Thanks to all our panelists and thanks to all of you all for being here for this time period. I'll hand it over to our host now.
Thank you so much for giving us this Saturday evening, to the panelists as well as the audience, and spending this time watching this movie and listening to each other. So as we conclude the screening and the panel discussion, I'd like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who makes this event possible and meaningful. So first and foremost, that is all the panelists. Thank you very much, and Arvind for moderating today. Thank you so much for giving us your insights. As we understand, the thought scene in Bangalore is different, or we don't get to interact with people who've done this work very often, or it just becomes very easy the way life and this works to not stop or slow down or have these important conversations. So it's always nice to have people take out time and talk to us about these things. And to everybody in the audience, thank you so much for your presence and engagement, your questions, and your remarks have made this discussion more meaningful. And our only hope as LawSoc is that we take these discussions out of this small classroom and sort of make of that what you can, whether it is writing, reading, protesting, but make meaning out of it in any way possible. And we as a committee only want to facilitate the same, so we hope to see everything around for other such events, and you will get around in remembrance or in activism in any which way we can. And this is also a big thanks to everybody in LawSoc and the Feminist Alliance who worked tirelessly to make this event happen. And everything we have here go around, where we go through, and we're very grateful for everybody's efforts. Thank you so much. We would like both the conveners from both committees, Dishan and Smriti, to just deliver some thought out mementos that we wanted to give you guys. And one last reminder is that the postcards for the Lama days are also outside. If you're interested in checking them out, all proceeds will go to fundraising for Gaza. Thank you so much. Thank you. Guys, if you want to come forward with a photograph after this, we should probably do that. That'd be nice. If the panelists are okay with that, we'll take a small photo. Should we run this? Some people think about it. Just please be careful of the wires. We're very sorry if you get a mess there. Squeeze it in everyone's face. We would fit in one place.
It is only part of again. Stand behind this. Stand on chair.
How can we try?
Come join.